Raised in an orphanage, Eliana faces a painful past when her estranged mother suddenly reappears after 2 decades. What is the true motive behind her mother's return? And how will Eliana confront the hidden truths that have shaped her life? Before we dive into the story, don't forget to click subscribe and let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. The fluorescent lights of the orphanage hummed a melancholic tune, a constant backdrop to Eliana's childhood. Her rich, deep mahogany skin contrasted sharply with the pale faces around her, a constant unspoken question mark etched upon her existence. She was a secret, born of a clandestine affair between her white mother and a black man, a truth too inconvenient and scandalous to be kept within the pristine walls of her family home. She was barely a year old when her mother brought her here, a bundled silence in her trembling arms. She remembered nothing of that day, only the stories whispered by the older caregivers, stories of a beautiful woman with haunted eyes who had promised to return, a promise that had withered and died with each passing year. She learned early that promises, like dreams, could fade into the thin air of forgotten hopes. The orphanage was her entire world, a place of structured kindness, shared meals, and worn-out toys. There, under the patient gaze of caregivers, she learned to read and play, all while observing other children leave, adopted into new families. Her unique color and the indelible mark of abandonment set her apart, creating a quiet loneliness that clung to her. As she grew, sharp, insistent questions arose. Why her? Why was she left behind? Caregivers offered solace but no truth, vaguely stating, "There is a plan for you, Eliana." She buried her curiosity, focusing on tangible goal studies, orphanage jobs, and a life beyond these walls. Driven by a fierce need for self-worth and independence, she excelled in school, determined to build a future not dictated by her past. 20 years passed. Eliana, no longer a bewildered girl, became a tall, lean woman with intense eyes, reflecting the solitude-forged resilience. She worked at a bookstore, saving for university and independence, believing she'd made peace with her past. The wound of abandonment had scarred over, a dull ache. Her birth mother was a ghost, a closed chapter. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, the ghost walked in. The bell above the bookstore door chimed, a cheerful sound that belied the sudden, chilling shift in the air. Eliana looked up from dusting a shelf of classic novels. A woman stood there, bathed in the afternoon sun, her silhouette momentarily obscuring the light. She was elegantly dressed, her hair a cascade of silver and gold, her eyes, when she stepped fully into the store, a startling shade of blue that struck a chord deep within her. They were the eyes from her dreams, the eyes she had seen in the fleeting reflections of her own, a genetic echo. "Eliana?" Her voice was soft, hesitant, yet it carried an undeniable authority. She felt a tremor run through her, a seismic shift in the carefully constructed landscape of her life. "Yes." Her voice was raspy, unfamiliar even to herself. She walked towards her, her movements fluid and graceful, like a predator approaching its prey, albeit a hesitant one. I'm Eleanor Vance." The name hit her with the force of a physical blow. Eleanor Vance, her mother, the woman who had given her life and then given her away. She stared at her, her mind reeling. What was she doing here? After 2 decades of absolute silence, of deliberate absence, she had simply appeared. There was no warmth in her gaze, no filial affection, only a cold, hard curiosity. "What do you want?" she asked, the words clipped, devoid of emotion. Her eyes, those unsettlingly familiar blue eyes, clouded with something she couldn't quite decipher. Regret? Shame? Fear? I've come for you, Eliana. I want you to come home." The absurdity of it was almost laughable. "Home?" she scoffed, a bitter sound. "I had no home." "You made sure of that." A flinch crossed her face, a brief spasm of pain. "I know, I made a terrible mistake. A terrible, unforgivable mistake. But I want to make amends. I want to be your mother, Eliana." She shook her head, her hands clenching into fists. "It's a little late for that, isn't it? 20 years late?" "What changed, Eleanor?" What could possibly make you suddenly remember you had a daughter? She knew instinctively that this wasn't about sudden maternal love. It was about something else, something tangible, something that held monetary value. Her gaze flickered, avoiding hers. There's something you need to know about your father. Her biological father. The man who was as much a mystery as her mother had been. My father? She raised an eyebrow, a sardonic twist to her lips. The one you never spoke of? The one whose existence was apparently so shameful that you abandoned as child? She took a deep breath, her shoulders slumping slightly. He was a good man, Eliana. A remarkable man. His name was Marcus Thorne. The name meant nothing to her. He passed away recently, and he left you something. Eliana's jaw tightened. Left me what? A letter? An apology? Eleanor hesitated, her gaze dropping to the polished wooden floor. He left you everything, his entire estate. Eliana stared at her, uncomprehending. What are you talking about? Marcus Thorne was a very successful businessman. An innovator. He built an empire. And I never told him about you, Eliana. I kept it a secret all these years. But when he became very ill, I finally told him. He desperately wanted to meet you, but he was too ashamed. Too ashamed that he couldn't be a good father to Eliana. He never forgot you. Her voice grew softer, almost pleading. He left you $1 billion. The words hung in the air, a surreal, heavy presence. $1 billion. It was a sum so astronomical, so utterly beyond the scope of her reality, that it sounded like a cruel joke. She worked at a bookstore, earned enough to pay rent and buy groceries, dreamed of a small college scholarship. $1 billion. $1 billion. She repeated, her voice flat. She nodded, her eyes now filled with a desperate earnestness. Yes, and his will stipulates that the funds be released to you only after you have established a relationship with your mother. His lawyers contacted me. They knew where to find me. They said I had to find you. The truth, raw and ugly, settled over her like a shroud. This wasn't about love. It wasn't about regret. It was about money. Her sudden appearance, her feigned contrition, it was all a carefully orchestrated performance, a key to unlock a vast fortune. So, she said, her voice laced with venom, I'm not your daughter. I'm a bank account. A loophole in a dead man's will. Tears welled in her eyes, finally spilling over, tracing paths down her carefully made-up cheeks. No, Eliana, please. It's not like that, I swear. This forced me to confront what I did, to finally seek you out. It made me realize how much I truly lost. She watched her cry, unmoved. The years of unspoken pain, the quiet nights filled with longing for a mother who never came, had hardened her. Her tears felt like a performance, another manipulation. Did you really lose anything? She asked, her voice chillingly calm. You went on with your life, didn't you? You had your family, your perfect life, while I was here wondering why it wasn't enough, why I was disposable. Eliana, please, she whispered, stepping closer, her hand reaching out to her. She recoiled, a sharp, instinctive movement. Don't touch me. Her hand dropped, trembling. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I can't undo the past. But please, just let me try. Let me explain. Let me be a part of your life now. She closed her eyes for a moment, picturing the worn-out linoleum floors of the orphanage, the scent of antiseptic and old books, the faces of the caregivers who had truly raised her, loved her, nurtured her. They were her family, not this stranger who stood before her, weeping for a fortune. You want to be a part of my life, she finally said, opening her eyes. Her gaze was piercing, unyielding. You want a relationship? You want to explain? She took a step back, putting distance between them. Fine. Explain. Tell me everything. But understand this, Eleanor Vance. $1 billion might buy you a lot of things, but it can't buy back 20 years of a mother's absence. It can't buy my forgiveness. And it certainly can't buy my love. Eliana listened to Eleanor's pleas, her explanations, her carefully constructed narrative of regret and revelation. She spent days, weeks even, engaging with the lawyers, learning about Marcus Thorne, the man who had been her father. She heard stories of his philanthropy, his vision, his unwavering belief in making a difference in the world, and she understood. She understood that while the money was meant for her, it carried the weight of a past she hadn't chosen, a past that still felt like a burden. In the end, Eliana made a decision that surprised Eleanor, and perhaps even herself. She refused the inheritance, all $1 billion. Instead, she worked with Marcus Thorne's lawyers to establish a charitable foundation in his name, dedicated to supporting orphanages and educational programs for children from disadvantaged backgrounds around the world. It was a way to honor the good in her father, to transform the pain of her past into a beacon of hope for others. Eleanor, initially shocked by Eliana's refusal, eventually withdrew, their relationship remaining distant. Eliana, however, channeled her relentless work ethic and sharp intellect into her own endeavors. She built a thriving online bookstore from scratch, a success born not of inherited wealth, but of her own hands, mind, and indomitable spirit. She found her true home in a life built on her own terms, free from the shadows of the past, illuminated by her hard-won achievements.